my special guest. He's a New York criminal defense attorney with over 35 years of courtroom experience. Knowledge plus experience equals success. No other than Mr. Saul Bienenfeld.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It's such a pleasure to be here with you tonight. Yes, knowledge plus experience equals success. That is my tagline. If you have the knowledge and you have the experience, you will be successful. And that's what I want to be for my clients. I want to be successful. I want to get them out of the trouble that they've got themselves into or that someone thinks they're into. And it needs to be done properly. It needs to be done quickly, and it needs to be done um, immediately. And there's a process to do it. And I want to experience that process with you and explain it to your listeners so that people will understand how to get out of trouble if they get into trouble.
Definitely. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Saul. And tell us, what is a criminal defense attorney in real life?
So, a criminal defense attorney basically is somebody who defends people who are accused of crimes. The police go out, they investigate a crime, they find a suspect, they arrest the suspect. That suspect is now known in parlance as a criminal, okay, and he will have to go to court and fight this case. Uh, the attorney, the criminal defense attorney, is the person who's going to help him through that process. Um, a criminal defense attorney does a lot more than just show up in court and argue to a judge and a jury. A criminal defense attorney becomes that person's best friend sometimes, becomes that person's confidant, becomes that person's the only person who knows the truth about that person sometimes, becomes a social worker, becomes a therapist, and actually helps out that person in all fields of life. Because that's what a criminal defense attorney does. It's not just being in court, it's being a person who will be the person to help the criminal, the person accused of a crime. And that's what I do. I love doing it.
So, what are your struggles of being this kind of field?
It's so interesting you ask that. A lot of people ask you, how do you defend somebody you know is guilty? My job is not to know if somebody's guilty or not. My job is to give them the best possible defense ever. That's my job. I don't struggle if I know somebody is guilty. I know that I have to work actually harder. I know I have to work 10 times harder to make sure that justice is served. All right. Now, that could be in a million things. The police might have done something wrong. The judge might have done something wrong. The person might be accused of the wrong crime. The person might be accused of doing it on the wrong day. Whatever it is, I need to find a reason to convince the judge or the jury that my client should not be charged with this crime, should be innocent, and should be let go. If I only defended innocent people, I never would sleep at night. There's so much pressure in defending an innocent person. The person's life is in my hands at all times. What if I lose the case? An innocent person goes to jail. That would destroy me. I wouldn't be able to function the next morning. So yes, I defend people who are accused of crimes, and I defend people who sometimes are guilty. And I've had plenty of innocent people in my career, plenty of innocent people that I've gotten off, thank God. And hopefully, no innocent person goes to jail. That's what's really important.
Mr. Saul, what inspired you to pursue a career as a criminal defense attorney?
Such a great question. My whole life I always wanted to be an actor. I was watching
Wow.
television. I've been to Hollywood. I've been to Los Angeles. I've been to Avenue of the Stars. Great stuff. And I was like, oh, I could do this. I could be an actor. Then when you really think about it, not too many people actually become actors. Most of them are known as struggling actors. But where can I act? Where can I get this, this desire to be an actor out of my system in the courtroom? I could talk to a judge. I could talk to a jury. I could talk to other attorneys. I could talk to clients, and I could become that actor that I want to be. So that's really what inspired me to go into law, and inspired me specifically to go into litigation and definitely into criminal defense work. Most TV shows about lawyers are about crimes, and then you see the
Yes.
courtroom scenes, and I just was fell in love with those courtroom scenes, and I said I want to do that, but I want to do it in real life.
Yes, indeed. And how would you describe the role of a criminal defense attorney to someone unfamiliar with it?
Well, the criminal defense attorney is the person who's going to assist the person accused of the crime. It's the person who's going to be the advocate for the defendant. That's what they're called. The person accused of a crime is a defendant. So the defendant will talk to the criminal defense attorney, tell them what happened, tell them what they're accused of. The criminal defense attorney will then go look at the charges, read the charges, understand the charges, look up the law, find out what the law is, what the elements of the charges are. Did the person, was accused, who was accused of the crime, did they accuse him of every single element of the crime? Then possibly speak with the prosecutor who is prosecuting the case, who's bringing the case for the government, for the state, or for the federal government, and find out a little bit more details. Interview some of the witnesses, do a little bit more research into the law, and really find out what happened and what your client is accused of. And then through motion practice, through further interviews with witnesses, and possibly through a trial, through hearings and trial, prove that your client is not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's the key thing in America: reasonable doubt. And a reasonable doubt is what the standard is to find somebody guilty. You'd have to find them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes, indeed. And what are the most challenging aspects of defending clients in criminal cases?
You know, sometimes the most challenging aspect is the client himself or herself. Sometimes the client thinks they know better, and it's an interesting dynamic that the attorney has with the client. You have a client who, is a very bright person who tells you, "I could win this case, and I definitely could win this case, and I want to win this case." And as the attorney, I definitely want to win the case also, but I also have to guide the client properly. And if there's an offer on the table of very little jail time or probation, sometimes the client has to take that offer because the evidence is so overwhelming against them. I can give you a real life story. A real life story is as follows: a person was accused of touching a female passenger on an airplane. When the plane landed,
Okay.
this person
Yes.
was arrested. Okay, the federal government, the FBI came in and arrested the person and put him in jail. Now he came from another country. Okay, I went ahead. I was called. I went down. I interviewed him. I talked to him. I spoke to him, and I told him, I said, "Let me see if I can make a deal where they deport you from this country, and the case will be over. Just with you, that you make a promise never to come back to the United States." Okay, he wasn't a U.S. citizen. I was able to get that deal. I was able to secure that deal. The government agreed to it. Yes, they didn't want to go through the expense of a trial. And I went back to the client who was still in jail and I said, "Listen, I have a great deal for you. If you leave and promise never to come back to the United States, this whole case will go away. You don't even have to plead
Yes.
guilty, just leave." And he said, "No, I would never do it." I'm like, "What do you mean you'll never do it?" He says, "I didn't commit this crime and I want to go to trial." I said, "You're going to have to stay in jail because you're a foreign person. You don't get bail. You're going to stay in jail until this trial. I mean, I'll try to get you bail, but you're going to stay in jail and then we'll have the trial in 5, 6 months. And if I win, great, but you could have been finished with this whole thing already." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to take the offer. I'm not going to do that. I want to go to trial." Sure enough, he went to trial and unfortunately he lost. That's a very difficult client because it's I had a win in my hands and he didn't want to accept
Yes.
it. So
Yes.
that was a very challenging case, a very difficult case for me, and I felt terrible for the client and I did my best, but you can't win every single case, especially when the evidence is so stacked against you.
That's a beautiful scene for a TV series, Mr. Soul.
Yes.
Indeed. And how do you approach building trust with the clients who may be facing serious charges, as you mentioned a while ago?
It's so important to be the person as a criminal defense attorney that the client would want to have dinner with. That's what I always say. I want to be the person that the client wants to invite over to their house for dinner, to introduce to their family, to introduce to their wife, their husband, whoever the client is, to introduce to their children, that they want their mother and father to know that I'm their attorney. If I could get the trust that way and I could show them the personal side of me, of Saul Bienenfeld, and they could show me the personal side of themselves, the rest is easy. The law I know, the facts will find out. I need the client to trust me and to like me. And I, my major suggestion to everyone is, if you have an attorney that you don't like, that's not a good attorney for you. You need to
Yes.
actually like your attorney. You need to be like the attorney so much that it's somebody you would want to spend time with without having a case against you. If you like your attorney that much, the rest will follow.
Can you share a memorable case that significantly shaped your perspective as an attorney?
Most definitely. I had a client that unfortunately was accused of a terrible crime. He was accused of touching of raping his stepdaughter. Um, and sometimes you just know your client is innocent. And I spoke to him, and I just knew it in my heart. This guy did not do it. The For whatever reason, this girl made up a story, and she was
Yes.
going with it. And we worked tirelessly on building an alibi that it was impossible for him to have committed this crime when she says the crime was committed. Impossible. And we built up such an alibi to the extent that when I showed it to this girl's mother, the mother actually said to me, I think you're right. I think my daughter made it up. I don't think that he did it. And I went ahead and I brought this all my evidence into the district attorney's office. It was in the Kings County District Attorney's office in Brooklyn, and I met with three of the prosecutors, right, the bureau chief, the deputy bureau chief, and the line assistant, and I presented everything to them, and they said, "No, so we believe the victim. Sorry, we're going to go forward with it." So I said, "Okay, in that case, he wants to testify in front of the grand jury." In New York, the defendant has the opportunity to testify in front of the grand jury. And I brought him in front of the grand jury. Now, there's something else I actually did. I actually had him polygraphed. Now, polygraph doesn't. It's not a good science to be used in court. But for everyone's sake, I wanted him polygraphed, and he was telling the truth. He never touched the girl. And we went through every single day that he was accused of doing this, where he was, and we recreated every day from his emails, from his receipts, his gas receipts, his movie receipts, his food receipts. I had hundreds of pieces of evidence to show timing and location of where he was, and I was able to show the grand jury it wasn't him. There's no way it was him, that she wasn't telling the truth. And the grand jury came back with a no true bill. That means they did not indict him. I saved that man's life, because had that gone to grand jury without him testifying and he would have been indicted, and then there would be a trial, it'd be a much different story. I saved his life. And to this day, we still speak to each other. We're very good friends.
Well, Mr. Saul, congratulations. And we salute you for that. And what strategies do you use to prepare for a high stakes trial?
Well, preparation is everything. If it's a high stakes trial, there's usually a lot of paperwork involved. Everything has to be read over 5, 6 times. I now have the benefit of AI. I could actually feed the information into a computer. I could ask the computer different questions about the information. I want to know everything that is in writing about what my client is accused of. Then I want to interview witnesses. Live witnesses are so important. And I'll do it in two ways. One is I will send a private investigator out to go speak with them. And then I will speak to them personally myself. I want to hear from their own mouths what they have to say, whether my client did something or didn't do something. I need to know what it is that they're going to be testifying about. I also will meet with the government. I want to understand from the government's perspective why they think that my client is guilty. Why do they think that they can prove their case? What evidence do they have? I want to analyze the evidence. I want to see what it's like. If it's a tangible piece of evidence, I want to touch it. It's a visual piece of evidence, I want to see it. If it's a location, I want to go there. And I want to relive everything that they say happened. And I'll do it with my client if I can also. And then I want to prepare my client as if he or she is going to testify. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to testify or she's going to testify. Probably will not. Okay. But I want to prepare them in such a way that if I have to put them on the stand, I can put them on the stand. And I want to hear everything they have to say, how they're going to say it, and how convincing they could be. Because I need to know that I'm playing to a jury or I'm playing to a judge. And then they need to hear it in the ears and see it in the eyes of the judge and jury. And once I'm satisfied that I have a defense, I'm ready to go forward with it.
Wow. How do you balance ethical responsibilities with the duty to provide a vigorous defense?
The Constitution of the United States says that everyone is entitled to the best defense they could get. That's what the Constitution says. I, as an American citizen, back up the Constitution of the United States. I am part of that process. I'm part of the democratic process and part of the judicial process. That is my job. My job as an American citizen, my job as a criminal defense attorney is to give the best possible defense to anyone who hires me. So There is no ethical considerations about this. I am doing what I'm told to do by our government, by our constitution, and by our judiciary. So I don't have any ethical issues in terms of, wow, you're defending somebody who's guilty. I'm like, I'm defending somebody who deserves a defense. That's who I'm defending. All right. I don't see guilt or innocence in a person. I just see a person who deserves a defense because that's what our government and our country allows.
How do you handle the emotional toll of representing a client in a difficult or controversial cases?
It's very hard not to take your work home. There's no question about it.
Mm.
I have clients accused of some very serious and heinous crimes, child pornography, child abuse. I've have murder cases. I have assault cases. I have domestic violence cases. I have drug cases. Um, but each person is a human, and I find the humanity in each of my clients. I find a reason to love each of my clients, not just to like them, but to love them. Everyone has a redeeming factor. I've never met somebody who has no redeeming factors. And I focus on that. And I focus on the fact that I am saving somebody's life, somebody with a redeeming factor. I'm saving their life. And I need to do this. I need to consider that this is a person who is being accused by a system that's very rough and very tough. And I have to make sure that they get the best defense that they could get because I'm their only advocate sometimes. Sometimes their own wife and family are against them. Sometimes their own synagogue, church is against them. And there's only one person who's advocating on their behalf, and that would be me. And I need to make sure that I'm doing it in the right, proper way. All right. So when I come home at night and I put my head on the pillow, I know that I did a good job and I did the best possible job I could do for this person. And yes, it is tough. There are plenty of sleepless nights. That happens. I'm human also. It does affect me. And sometimes,
Definitely.
yeah. And sometimes I see the victims in my head and I'm like, I feel sorry for them, but I still have a job to do. And I do that job very well.
What is the most rewarding part of being a criminal defense attorney?
Winning. Winning is always the most rewarding part. That thank you at the end of a case is the most
Yes,
rewarding part. That firm handshake and a hug, knowing that you did a great job, is the most rewarding part. But making sure that the government doesn't get away with, and I really mean the words getting away with some of the stuff that they try to do. Um, if there's an illegal search, it needs to be brought out that there's an illegal search, that whatever was found cannot be used. So that it's very important. It's very rewarding when I do win, even the small little battles. If evidence is suppressed, if a statement is suppressed, the small little battles are big wins sometimes, and they all add up, and it's very rewarding. And of course, like I said, like with I've made friends for life with clients because I've saved their lives. I have a client 25 years ago, 25 years already. She was accused of murder, quite frankly. She was accused of killing her own daughter. It's a horrible, horrible accusation. And I won the case. She didn't do it. There was no question in my mind she didn't. She did it. There was no question in my mind she didn't do it. And I won the case.
mm,
Every year, 4 times a year, she sends me a thank you note. I've saved them. I have hundreds of notes from her at this point. Every year, 4 times a year, she writes me a note, thank you, and thanking me, telling me what her life is like. It's so interesting. This is somebody who really appreciated it, and I get a tremendous amount of joy from it. The fact that I did an amazing thing. I really helped her. She could have been in jail for life, quite frankly, and she's not, and she's able to write me that letter 4 times a year.
totally. Powerful, and grateful indeed of what you did. And how do you approach cases where the evidence against your client seems overwhelming?
There's a lot of cases where the evidence is overwhelming. But like I said, first find the redeeming factor in the client, then you will find the loophole in the evidence. And if it is a loophole, use it. If it's a strategy, use it. If you need to beg for mercy, beg for mercy. If there's no way out, then just beg for mercy. Show the prosecutor how human your client is, that your client deserves a second chance, and try to plead the case.
Yes. And what advice would you give to someone considering a career in criminal defense?
Go for it. It's
Mm,
the most
yes.
rewarding experience you'll ever have. You'll be able to talk to clients one on one. You'll be able to do interesting work. Every case is different because every person is different. You know, you might have two drug cases, but each case is different. Even if the drug is the same, each case is different because each personality is different. And the way you approach a case is different. You'll never be bored. It's a great profession.
Indeed, one of a kind. How do you manage relationships with the prosecutors, judges, and the other courtroom players?
I try to get along with everyone. That's the most important thing. I'm very respectful to the judges. I'm very respectful to the prosecutors, but I really want to get along with them. I want to be the person that when the case is over, they'll see me in the hallway and they'll still respect me and like me. So I'm very respectful to them. I do hold them accountable for what they have to be accountable for, and I hope that they do the same for me, and they do. They hold me accountable for what I need to be accountable for. But it's always a very cordial relationship. I know that people think, oh, you have to hate the prosecutor. You don't have to hate the prosecutor. The prosecutor's doing the same job you're doing. They're just doing it for the other side. I actually like the prosecutors. I get along with them. I want to get along with them. I just want to make sure that my client gets the best possible defense.
Mr. Sol, what impact has the technology had on the practice of criminal defense law?
Wow. There's so much going on there. First of all, let's talk about AI. Let's talk about Chat GPT. I've clients that put their case into Chat GPT, and Chat GPT tells them they're innocent. So it's a challenge.
Yes,
With clients with too much knowledge, quite frankly. And then
true.
there's other technology. There's GPS devices that the police are using that could find out where you are. The cell phone technology is always out there. Every text message that you ever wrote will be found. Every email you ever sent will be found. Every bank transaction you ever make will be found. It's very hard to hide anything from the government these days. So because of technology, be honest with your lawyer because we're going to find out about it anyway, and it's easier to head off of the pass if we know about it right away.
Yes, present the facts. So, how do you address biases in the criminal justice system when defending your clients?
Wow, that's a hard question because there's not supposed to be a bias. That's the you're not supposed to have a bias, but sometimes you can use the bias to your advantage. If it's a racially motivated case, you could use it to your advantage, and sometimes you can't. But it definitely has to be pointed out, and it should never be ignored, and it should be something that should be discussed and openly, and let people know that you're recognizing a bias and deal with it head on.
Deal with it, people. Also, can you share an example of a time you turn a challenging case into a success?
Well, yeah, like when I told you about where he was accused of raping his stepdaughter. But another very challenging case was an elderly woman was picked up by the Secret Service one morning. Early in the morning, she lived in Washington Heights. They broke into her house. They took her out in her nightgown, quite frankly. They put her in handcuffs and they accused her of a bank robbery. A bank robbery. We're talking about an 83-year-old woman. What? Bank robbery? This makes no sense. I met her. She told me she has no idea what they're talking about. I didn't rob any banks. I was like, this is crazy. I spoke with the agents. I spoke with the U.S. attorney, and they said, look, your client is what's called a note passer. Went to the teller, wrote a note that says, give me all the money, put it in a bag, and that's how she attempted to rob the bank. And they know for sure it's her. I said, this is crazy. Let me see the videos. You look at the videos, it's a question. Maybe it's her, maybe it's not her. It was hard to tell. The videos were very grainy. But one thing I did see on the video is I saw two Brinks drivers. They were delivering money to the bank at that time. So I said, I'm going to find these Brinks drivers because the person on the video passed her, passed the Brinks drivers. And I tracked them down and I found them and I interviewed them. And then I showed them a picture of my client. And they said, that's definitely not the woman who passed us. I said, how do you know that? He said, well, I'm a former police officer. I was trained in identification of people. And I can tell you that that's not the person. With that, I went back to the Secret Service. I said, these Brinks drivers say it's not the person. And I went to the U.S. attorney and I said, the Brinks driver says it's not the person. And the case was dismissed. That's a successful story.
Success indeed. Knowledge plus experience equals success. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Soul, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Saul, what do you wish the public understood better about the work of criminal defense attorneys?
Well, we do a good job and we do a fine job, but call us because we could help you. If you're in trouble, call a criminal defense attorney first.
Definitely. Mr. Soul, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thank
So
you, Daniel. It was a pleasure.
can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Certainly. You could find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and my website, bienenfeldlaw.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Soul because if you support him, more and more and more empowering advocacy to come, more and more empowering knowledge to come. So, Mr. Soul, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
More to come, people. See you soon.